You know the feeling. Someone walks up to you, smiles, and says, "So, busy week?" And something in you just closes. Not rudely, you smile back. You say, "Yeah, pretty busy." You ask them the same. They say the same. And you both stand there in this perfectly polite nothing, waiting for it to be over. You walk away and you feel it. That low-grade drain, like you just spent energy on something that gave you nothing back. And maybe you've wondered if something is wrong with you, because everyone else seems fine. Everyone else is laughing, chatting, filling the room with noise, and you're standing in the middle of it, feeling more alone than you did before you walked in. Nothing is wrong with you. But something is very specific about you, and that's what we're reading today. It's not that you're bad at it. That's the part nobody says out loud. You can do small talk. You've done it 1,000 times. You know the script, the weather, the weekend, the vague plans. You can perform it perfectly, and that's exactly the problem. It feels like a performance, and performance costs something. Every time you're standing there, saying words you don't mean about things you don't care about, part of your brain is working overtime, monitoring your tone, matching their energy, keeping the mask comfortable, smiling at the right moments. You get home and you're exhausted, not because you're weak, because you spent the last 2 hours doing something your brain was never built to coast through. Here's what's actually happening. Some people's minds are wired to go deep. Not as a preference, as a default. The moment a conversation starts, they're already looking for the real thing underneath it, the actual thought, the actual feeling, the thing the other person hasn't said yet but is clearly carrying. Small talk gives them nothing to work with. It's not boring, it's the wrong frequency entirely, like tuning into a station that only plays static and being told to enjoy the music. And the cruelest part, the louder the room, the more alone you feel, because you're surrounded by connection and none of it is landing. You're not antisocial. Let's just put that down. Because if you've ever hated small talk, you've probably been called that, or thought it about yourself. And it's not right. Think about the last real conversation you had. The kind where an hour disappeared, where you forgot to check your phone, where you walked away feeling full instead of hollow. You weren't antisocial then, you were lit up. That's the thing. It was never about people. It was always about depth. There's a pattern in people like you, and it shows up early. As a kid, you probably wanted to talk about the actual things. Why people do what they do. What happens after we die. Whether your friend's parents were actually happy or just pretending. While other kids were talking about cartoons, you were already somewhere else in your head. Adults called it too sensitive, or too intense, or too much. You learn to dial it back, to match the room, to ask about the weekend and nod at the answer and not show that you were somewhere else entirely. But you never stopped wanting the real thing. That wanting, that's not a flaw. That's just how you're wired. Some people's nervous systems process experience more deeply, more completely. They feel the subtext of a room. They notice what people don't say. They carry conversations long after they've ended. Small talk isn't just unstimulating for them, it's almost physically uncomfortable because they're already operating at a depth that the conversation isn't built to reach. Here's the part that stings a little. The reason you hate small talk, the depth you're always reaching for, that thing is exactly what makes you hard to get to know. Because you skip the ritual. Small talk isn't really about weather, or weekends, or what you did on your holiday. You know that. But here's what it actually is. It's the part where two people quietly check that it's safe, that the other person isn't a threat, that there's enough common ground to risk something more real. It's not a conversation, it's a handshake. And when you skip it, when you show up already wanting depth, already asking the questions that matter, already looking for the thread, it can feel to the other person like too much, too fast. Not because you did anything wrong, but because you jumped the queue on trust. So people pull back, and you feel it, that familiar wall, and you think, see, no one actually wants to go there. No one actually wants to talk about anything real. But that's not what happened. What happened is you tried to skip to chapter 10 before they'd read the first page. The people who seem to effortlessly get to depth, they're not more patient. They're not less intense. They just learn something specific, that the shallows are a bridge, not a destination. You don't have to live there, but you do have to cross them. One real question, one small moment of actual presence. That's usually enough to crack it open. Busy week can become, what kind of busy? The good kind? Or the kind where you just want it to be over? Watch what happens when you ask that. Watch how fast the wall comes down. There's one more thing. Sometimes the resistance to small talk isn't about depth at all. Sometimes it's protection. If you've been in rooms where being real got you shut down, where your intensity was treated like a problem, where going deep left you exposed and alone, you learned something. You learned that connection is expensive, and you started rationing it. Small talk feels pointless because somewhere underneath it you decided, if it can't be real, I don't want it at all. That's not a quirk. That's armor. And armor made sense once. It kept you safe when being open didn't. But armor is heavy, and it keeps out the good stuff too. The people who can move through the surface without drowning in it. They're not more shallow than you. They're not settling. They've just made peace with the fact that most moments are small, and that small moments, held lightly, are how you find the people worth going deep with. You don't have to love small talk. You never have to love it. But you might be able to stop fighting it. Use it as a scan, a filter, a short corridor you walk through on the way to the room you actually want to be in. The depth is still there. It was never the problem. It was always the gift. If any of this landed, if you felt even one line of it in your chest before your brain caught up, that's the tell. That's what this channel is for. Not explaining people, reading them, including yourself. Subscribe if you want more of this, and drop something in the comments. Tell me the last time a conversation actually went somewhere real. What made it different? I'll read every one.